Uh, Welcome everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the VICA Virtual After Dark. My name is Scott Mills, General Manager of the Garland, and we are proud to be one of the presenting sponsors of this event, along with the Walt Disney Company and co-sponsors, Association of Independent Commercial Producers, which is AICP, and also the California Resources Corporation. One day we'll meet again in person, and I'm hopeful that'll be here at the Garland in our ballroom that we renovated right before COVID. But in the meantime, I think we want to all thank VICA and their team for a great job of putting together today's events and then the events in the past year. It's been great to have Remo and have this opportunity to get together. I hope you did enjoy your networking opportunity. I certainly did. Met a lot of great individuals, and certainly our guest of the evening, I learned his secret recipe for his meatloaf. So who knows where that'll end up on our menu at some point. But a little bit about the Garland. Most of you know about the hotel and the history. Over 50 years here in the Valley, still family owned and family, very much part of the family, the second generation. And we've been here as what you see today for 6 years, but over 50 years total. And still on the Condé Nast list of top hotels in LA that goes against all the hotels over the hill in Beverly Hills and the Shutters in Santa Monica and so forth, as well as top 15 hotels in travel and leisure. This year, just at the beginning of COVID, we were honored with Travel and Leisure one of the top 500 hotels in the world, which is pretty cool. That's one of 500 in the world is amazing. So there's 400 hotels in Los Angeles alone. So we're very proud of that, but we don't take any of that for granted. We just try to provide a genuine experience, very much an LA and California filter on what we do here. And then we also have our front yard restaurant, which if I had my way, I would have forced Stuart and Jessica to make sure we each had a care package for this thing tonight with some wine and maybe some of that green hummus or something else from our kitchen. But our front yard restaurant's very much a locals hangout, and certainly is a place to go for a great brunch or dinner or lunch, and lots of outdoor space, very safe, and we follow all the rules almost overboard, but we feel like that's the right thing to do in these times. So that's the front yard, but our event space, tons of event space, 24,000 square feet or so of indoor outdoor event space. So we're good for 2 people or for 250 people or more. So a lot of good things happening here. But enough about the Garland. I do want to introduce our other presenting sponsor this evening. And before I even do that, I want to remind you that you can ask questions to the sender this evening. You can write them in the Q&A section where guests can vote on those questions they want answered, or you can raise your virtual hand when we get to that point of the event. So I've talked enough. I want to introduce our other presenting sponsor for this evening from the Walt Disney Company, Lisa Pitney. She'll be on right now. And thank you so much for your time, and thanks for this opportunity. Take care. Lisa, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Scott. We are so happy and proud to be a sponsor of tonight's event. And I did want to start out by thanking VICA and all the members of VICA for the ongoing support for the motion picture and television industry, and also for the theme park industry. So exciting that after being closed for so long, finally, tickets for Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure will go on sale starting tomorrow. And then we will finally open the gates to our parks in Anaheim on April 30. It's been a long journey, and boy, I just cannot wait for that moment to stand there and see the faces of our guests as we welcome them back. Oh, and Stuart already has his Disneyland tickets. Of course he does. I would have expected nothing less. But let's get to our speaker, who I am also incredibly thrilled to have a chance to introduce. So Senator Anthony Portantino, who represents California's 25th State Senate District. So he must have one of the longest Senate districts there is. Stretches all along the 210 freeway from Sunland to Hunga, all the way to Upland. He proudly represents the Rose Bowl. He's got Jet Propulsion Laboratories, Caltech, Griffith Park, Warner Brothers, Disney, where I work, Claremont Colleges, where my husband works, and he also has the Pitney family home in his district. He has been supporting causes such as public education, mental health, sensible gun control. They've been his priorities ever since he's been in elected office. One of his biggest achievements, he increased funding for special education, and congratulations on that, Senator. I know you're one of the biggest supporters of special education, and also the K-12 local control funding formula. He's authored legislation creating California's umbilical cord blood collection program, prospect the start time for middle and high schools. I know that I have kids, big fans of pushing for that, and also banned open carry of handguns. You might remember that California raised the purchase age of firearms to 21. And he's put at the forefront suicide prevention, putting suicide hotline numbers on student identification cards. Senator Portantino is currently the very powerful chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and also the Select Committee to Foster Trade between California and Armenia. Prior to being up in Sacramento, he spent many years working in the film and television industry, also serving on the California Film Commission. I have to say he has been an absolutely unwavering champion of the film and television industry. A lot of folks in the industry live in his district. He's also was the mayor of La Cañada Flint Ridge before going to Sacramento, and has never wavered from his support for the industry and the jobs that it creates and the economic development that it brings to so many of the businesses that support it. I could really go on, but Senator Portantino has really stood with us unwaveringly since he's been an elected official. So for all those and many other reasons, please join me in welcoming Senator Anthony Portantino.
I don't know why it's not. Oh, there we go. Camera on. Hey.
Yes.
Hello, Lisa Pitney. How are you?
Hello, Senator.
Good to see you. The check is in the mail for that extensive, zealous resume. So thank you for that. And happy to be here with everybody. VICA obviously is a big part of the western part of my district. There I am. Everybody can hear me, I hope. Is it all coming through? And so very happy to be here tonight to share a little bit about what's going on up in the Capitol. So thank you, VICA, and thank you everybody who's come out virtually to share this. Hopefully soon we'll be able to do these in person. The trends are in the right way. Get your vaccination. Let me do a little commercial. Get your vaccination as soon as you're eligible, as soon as you're able to. And obviously continue to wear your mask and social distance and be smart about this. We want to make sure we don't have another wave and we don't end up inadvertently helping to close the economy once we're celebrating getting it open. So, wearing a mask is a sign you love your neighbor. It's not a political statement. It just means you care about the people around you. So, wear your mask. Lisa did a great job sharing the district. I tell my colleagues in Sacramento that I have the best district in the state of California, and all of you can attest to that. From the Claremont colleges to the studios and everything in between, it really is a wonderful place to call home and represent. This year, legislatively, because of the pandemic, because of the situation we were in, the legislature did something very different. We moved up in what we called early actions to deal first with the rental housing market. You all know we extended the rental housing provisions that we had from last year to try to stabilize that market, which was created an 80-20 split between the landlords and the tenants because we wanted to bring stability to our housing market during the pandemic. So that was first. And then second, the governor before Christmas announced the small business relief grant, and I believe phase 5 just closed last week, and there's phase 6 coming up. One of the important parts of the small business relief grant program was we extended it to nonprofits as well. There were a number of us who pushed for the inclusion of nonprofit help, because as you know, nonprofits play an increasing importance to the small business community and the social health and safety net. And so nonprofits were eligible. And then this week, the fire relief, the fire resiliency package was signed by the governor again, bringing some urgent action to making sure California is well positioned to fight fires. As you know, we used to have a fire season. Now we don't. We have a fire year. And California suffered some of the worst fires in history just in the past several years. So those are a couple of the things that we took early action on that you should all, keep abreast of. Anything that comes up on the small business side, don't hesitate to reach out to my office in Glendale. We can help you navigate the system. And also on EDD claims, we do even though the economy is starting to roar, we do an inordinate amount of EDD claims. There's still a lot of people in need of help, and my staff has been helping shepherd people through the system when they've received some challenges. So don't hesitate to reach out to my district office, where we have 2 people in there every day now. So we're starting to get back a little bit to normal, and take advantage of that if you need help. As Lisa said, I spend a lot of my time in the mental health and education space. Some of you know that my older brother committed suicide, and so it's a personal issue for me. And one of the things I learned through going through the process with him was just how many people felt comfortable talking to me about their family situation after I joined the club. Once I became a survivor of suicide, people felt comfortable talking to me about their aunt, their brother, their sister. Nobody talked to me about it beforehand. We go to a party, we talk about our cholesterol, we talk about our weight, we talk about our waistline, we talk about our kids' sports injury, but mental health issues are still in the shadows, and we got to bring them out. In order to get people help, we got to bring them out. And so I've got a bill this year to train 50% of all school personnel to recognize the warning signs of mental health issues. Last week, a father called into one of the hearings I was holding, and he talked about his 14-year-old daughter who handed in her journal and got an A on her journal, and then a couple of weeks later took her own life. The teacher was not trained to see the warning signs of her suicide and mental health issues in her journal. The father didn't blame the teacher because she wasn't trained. So we want to train 50% of all school personnel to recognize the warning signs of mental health issues. And I think we can save some lives if we do that. The other part of the bill is, believe it or not, there's a discrepancy in education code where mental health isn't treated the same way as physical health. Imagine being a teenager home with anxiety or other mental health issues, and you are worried that it's not an approved absence by your school, where if you have a cold, it's approved, but if you have anxiety or depression, it's not necessarily approved. And so we want mental health and physical health to be treated the same way. I was asked recently by somebody, what about if a child or parent lies about having depression? How do we safeguard? And I said, well, the fact that you asked that question is the reason why we have the bill, because you don't ask, what about if the parent lies about the cold, saying my son or daughter has a cold? Why would you assume that they would lie about mental health? And again, the discrepancy between how we treat mental health and physical health just needs to be changed. Second bill I have is to create a curriculum for students to learn about mental health in school. We know that peer-to-peer relationships are critical for the health and welfare of our kids. Oftentimes, our kids will listen to their peers before they listen to their parents. I know with my own daughter, we had to buy a Mazda because the barista that she was working with told her to buy a Mazda. And so I went to the car dealership, and they said, you want to look at our cars? I said, no. The barista told my daughter what car to buy, so we're buying a Mazda. And so peer-to-peer relationships are critical. And so if we can teach kids through elementary, middle school, and high school about mental health, we can help them help themselves and help them help their peers. Two other things I want to cover. I'm doing a bill on dyslexia screening. There was a study out of Texas where 7 out of inmates were dyslexic. It's the biggest, most prominent learning disability, dyslexia. And oftentimes it goes undetected until later years of school. And it's actually 4 times earlier, 4 times easier to bring needed care to a first grader with dyslexia than it is to bring to an 8th grader who gets discovered with dyslexia. So it's also 3 times cheaper to intervene in first grade versus 8th grade. And so there's a social justice component, there's a human component, there's a parental component. So we want to universally screen for dyslexia in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And then autism is another issue that is sort of not getting the care that it needs. There's only one autism treatment covered by insurance these days. And a lot of parents have to pay out of pocket for autism treatment that their kids benefit from because it's not that one particular treatment. And so we want to create a situation where any medically necessary doctor prescribed evidence-based autism treatment is covered by insurance. And so those are passionate issues. Lisa mentioned my support of the industry, the film industry. We're working with both the industry and labor groups on a tax credit for building more studio space, not just production tax credit, which we already have, but this would create a tax incentive to actually create more physical locations, physical studios in California to house productions. And it's getting a lot of support, and it's critical. As we've heard, the industry's roaring back, and there's not enough sound stages. So we're hoping we're going to build some more sound stages. So that's some of the legislation that I'm working on this year. Another important one that I want to cover is the repurposing of retail. As you know, due to the pandemic and also change in market trends, there's some dormant retail space out there. And the way we monetize land use in California is there's an incentive to have retail and not build housing. At the same time, California has a significant housing shortage. And so what we thought of, and BizFed came up with the idea. So if you're a member of BizFed, thank you, and thank them for coming up with the idea. But if we could estimate 7 years of what the sales tax would have been on that dormant retail space and give cities that 7 years of sales tax as an incentive to build workforce and affordable housing on that space, there's an incentive for cities to do it. I prefer incentivizing versus penalizing. And so it's a creative way to get more workforce housing and repurpose dormant retail. And so I believe that's going to get through the system as well this year. So that's a little bit of what I've been working on. I love living in our district, and so many of you, on this call tonight, we've worked together, and you know where my heart is, and I love my district, and I love being in the state Senate. And I guess, Stuart, we're going to take some questions as well. I don't know if you're going to who's going to moderate the questions or how they're going to come to me, but I'm happy to take a few questions. But that's a little bit what's going on. The budget's in great shape. We all thought this year there was going to be a big fiscal cliff. But with the federal stimulus money and just tax receipts being up, we're in good shape this year. And it makes our job a little harder when we have money. When we have no money, it's easy to just say no to everybody. But this year, we're going to be spreading it around. And the Senate just unveiled the budget package today that you should all look at the press release that the Senate came up with. So, Brad, are you my moderator?
I am, sir. And thank you very much for your comments, and very much appreciate your being with us today. I happen to be the chair of VICA this year and last year, so I haven't seen anybody in person through my entire chairmanship, and I think a lot of people are grateful for that. But appreciate you being here today, and also for that recipe for the meatloaf. Sounds fantastic.
It's all about the Parmesan cheese.
So we have a few questions. The first one relates to homelessness and the crisis that we're facing in California, and what at the state level is being done, can further be done to help us deal with that at the local level.
Well, a couple of things. I think we have to recognize with homelessness that there's 2 sort of structural reasons why we have homeless. Everybody focuses on the mental health piece, which is significant. The lack of mental health services. There is a significant portion of the homeless population that needs service. And we have to figure out a way to do that. The second piece is, it's 50-year-old working people who have lost their job and lost the ability to pay rent and, structurally fall into the homeless category. And one of the things that we're trying to do this year is have more rental assistance programs. It's cheaper to keep people in their homes than to let them fall out of their homes into the system. And so there's going to be a big focus on rental assistance this year, and certainly on the services that the second group needs. But those are sort of the two structural aspects of homelessness. And so we have to be smart about keeping people from falling in and then getting people out. So short-term housing is important, and all of that mental health and the services that community needs to prop them back up, to get them, back employed and back into habitation.
I think a lot of the solutions seem to be sort of very broad brush, but you do have different segments of the population with different needs, and has to be treated with sort of precision as opposed to just a broad brush.
Right.
It looks like Jennifer from UCLA has a question, and I don't exactly know how she can ask that verbally.
Type it in the chat. I don't know.
I guess we'll go with that unless somebody can instruct me differently. Okay. So there's going to be there is a budget surplus.
Hypothetically, we just invited her up, so she just has to turn on her camera.
There she is.
Hopefully she asked an easy question.
Wait, she disappeared.
Here I am. Sorry about that. Senator, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And I also wanted to thank you for your wildfire bond bill.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. So thank you for bringing that up, Jennifer. That's important.
Well, we're grateful for it. And something I wanted to ask you about is whether you'd be open to the thought of designating a small percentage, even if it's just 1% of those funds, for competitive research and science for short-term return on that research, to ensure that we're doing the best we can to fight the wildfires.
You're going to be mad at my answer.
Well, I think I might know what you're saying, but that's why I mentioned competitive funding, right?
Yeah, we do have a component in for, I guess there are 5 Cal states that do fire resiliency research. And so we did put some in for them, but I don't know if we put anything in for the UC system. So
not yet, sir. But we're looking forward to that.
So you knew the answer to that question before you asked it.
Well, I thought maybe a little bit of added funds that, again, could be on a competitive basis.
I'll tell Howard Walensky that you were flying the UCLA flag proudly.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we know that there's a bit of a budget surplus, so maybe if the program at UCLA could create new jobs, we can allocate. But that goes to the bigger question. So we've got a surplus. How is the state looking at using that to leverage more jobs in the state, whether public or private sector?
We're going to be injecting in job. There's going to be money for job training. There's going to be obviously education, which is the pipeline. Believe it, there is going to be some structural investments this year, both in jobs, both in housing, in homeless, in all of the work. What we in the state Senate are doing is and it was just unveiled today, so I encourage y'all to get a copy of it. We're going to be investing in the structural issues of California significantly, both with federal dollars and state dollars. I should have printed out the document before, but if anybody wants a copy of it, just contact my office and we'll get it out to you. But the state Senate today unveiled a very comprehensive, basically putting California back on its feet plan, with a lot of dedicated funds in the right places, and it's very comprehensive.
That sounds very interesting. We'll get a hold of that, because if the state needs anything, is that kind of investment for the future, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question. What would 2021 Anthony Portantino tell 2006 Anthony Portantino?
What goes down comes back up. Take the long view. I think that's the biggest lesson. As you get older, you realize, these things are cyclical. Also, to use the downturns to plan for the upturns. You don't want to wait, either way. You want to, when your times are good, you want to plan for when times are going to be bad, and when times are bad, don't react to the moment. The more long-term planning, and I think that's the biggest change. I think legislatively back in 2006, when we had 6-year legislatures, short-term legislatures, there was no such thing as long-term planning. People always ask me what the biggest, most effective reform from the Schwarzenegger years was, and I think it was the extension of the terms going from 6 years to 12 years, and cutting the jumping from one house to the other. If you remember, the moment you got into the assembly, you were looking at who was going to run against you for the Senate. Now you get in one house and you stay for 12 years. And it's cut down on the politics between the members, but it's also created a situation where you're there for more than a decade. So there's a lot more long-term planning. And I think that's been a benefit to the state of California.
How would you, or how is the state addressing the fact that our kids have been out of the classroom for a year now? And I don't know if there's been any analysis done, or if it's possible to understand what kind of impact that has had on the kids. And is the state really looking into that and analyzing how they might be able to address that going forward for these kids?
Absolutely. Most of the data is, like, for example, 20% of 1 in 5 students are dealing with a mental health issue right now. I mean, that's a significant number of California students. One of the reasons why I'm doing the mental health bills now is to put in place the help that students are going to need when they go back. I don't know if you saw today, the governor, I guess, announced that his expectation is that schools would be fully open in the fall and there would be extended hours. He made that announcement today. I think everybody recognizes the challenges that our kids have had. Learning forgetting how to play, forgetting how to interact. It's going to be every parent, and I'm a parent, every parent has to be sensitive to our kids who have been in their room digitizing their life. We knew that they like to text more than talk on the phone, but now they've been plugged in so much. So, I think the state is cognizant of that. Educators are cognizant of that. And, we're going to be focusing on all those issues without a doubt, going forward. One thing I forgot to mention, obviously smart policing is on everybody's mind. There's no denying that we've, every day it looks like there's a new, incident out there that's highlighting this, systemic racism, and there's this big debate within what do we do about law enforcement. Well, California is one of the few states in the country that doesn't require a certain level of education in order to become a police officer. Some states require a bachelor's degree, some states require an associate's degree. California doesn't. And so I'm working with the California police chiefs on rethinking how we recruit and train police officers. And we want to create a 15-course curriculum that would be required before you could go to the police academy. And that would include social work, sensitivity, psychology. I'm not going to determine the curriculum. The experts are going to determine what this 15-course curriculum is, so we can help train police officers on some of the emotional things. We saw that incident in Pasadena years ago where there was an autistic person, and they didn't know how to deal with them, and they ended up tasing him and restraining him, and then that person died because they weren't trained in how to deal with that type of mental health issue. And so we want to bring more training. And then the other piece of the bill is to recruit a more diverse police force and offer financial incentives for this coursework and try to make police departments reflect the community better. And so, that's important going forward as well, that we're smart about how we police and how we train our police officers in de-escalation and other issues.
I know that at least there used to be a psychological evaluation of candidates before they were even enrolled into the police academy. I'm just wondering, number one, if that's changed, and if that actually questions one's empathy, because
yeah, that system hasn't changed, and what we're looking to do is to change it to require coursework. I don't want to go right to a bachelor's degree in one jump, because I think that would be too dramatic. But the police chiefs across California think that a 15-unit coursework is a good foundation.
But if a person isn't empathetic from the get-go, right, does that training help that person?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, each of us are predisposed to certain outlooks. I always say you can't teach nice. When I hire staff, that's the number one quality that I look for, is if they're a nice person, because you can't teach them to be nice if they're not nice. And so I have the nicest staff in Sacramento because I only hire nice people.
Well, that's a definite asset in the work that you all do. So how's the legislature working right now to close the minimum wage gap between the state and LA City as it relates to nonprofits? So LA City requires a higher wage, but the state reimburses at a lower rate. Has that come up lately? And
that I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not an expert on that one, so I won't venture an answer on that. I haven't looked into that.
All right. So this is a question that I had also. What is the state going to do to address the workplace changes brought about by the pandemic? Kids are going into school for half a day, and people come into the office, they leave the office. The flexibility for an employer. I'm an employer. I provide a great deal of flexibility for the folks in my office, especially those with kids. And I can't imagine how they actually manage it all. And talk about mental health, I worry about that for the parents as well. How's that being addressed? Is there an effort on the state level to create more flexibility for employers and the workers?
I think there's going to be somebody who asked a data question earlier. I think there's going to be a lot of analysis of what the workplace looks like first before we enact policy. We want to see what the actual changes are going to be. So you can't enact the policies before you see. We all know people are working from home. There's going to be a lot more working from home. I think Zoom's is here to stay for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's made the world. They used to say the airplane made the world smaller. I think Zoom has made the world instant. And so I think a part of this electronic plugged in nature is going to be with us, and it's going to have on commuting, on office space, on workload. I mean, anybody who recently has been into a store to see, clothes, or, no one's buying dress clothes. There's a whole, we're selling more shirts than more pants because of Zoom. I mean, there's a lot of trends that we're going to have to study and drill down on, and then the following year do the policy to catch up to those trends. But I think if we try to legislate ahead of time, not knowing completely what's going to happen, that would be a prescription for potentially more problems. So I think we have to see what businesses are opening and not opening, and how they're dealing with, the situation.
Yeah, well, and creating or having that partnership with the business community and the property owners to understand how they're dealing with it and what they're seeing, I think is very important.
Absolutely. No, there's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. Well, in whatever way we can help with that, we're certainly available and would love to participate. One last question. So how has the pandemic changed your worldview, and are you looking at legislation differently through the lens of the pandemic and what we've experienced?
That's a great question. I think for me, first and foremost, I'm a dad. And so the pandemic forced me to look inward into our family and into my kids' health, like most parents. I think that it created a lot of reflective nature. It's no secret I've lost 127 pounds during the pandemic, so it's given me the opportunity to think about my health and the health and welfare of my family. I think that's a lens that I try to use. Going back to your, the empathy question, is trying to take the lessons learned and use that as a philosophy of legislating. So I think that's a critical piece of this. Some of it has made me sad. I mean, the fact that something as simple as a mask became a political statement, that's just not right. A mask is not a political statement. A mask means you love your neighbor. It's a sign of love. And the fact that people are attacking, folks for wearing a mask, or people are defiantly not wanting to wear a mask, I mean, that made me sad, frankly. Because you know what? We're supposed to love and care about our neighbors. And the best way to do that is to, recognize that what affects one of us affects all of us. And so we're all in this together. And so I think in many respects, the pandemic's brought out the best of people, and the best in people. And then in some places it's allowed other things to fester. So we just have to recognize that, as we come out of this, we have to have the mindset that if we end up having another, crisis or challenge, that we face it, with camaraderie and a deportment that recognizes that we're so interrelated.
Yeah, I think that's the most important message. We're all in this ball game together, and we should be playing the same game. Senator, really appreciate you being with us tonight, and thank you very much on behalf of VICA. You look fantastic, and I do look forward to some meatloaf sometime.
All right, next time I make it, Brad, I'll bring you a slice.
And of course, typically when we're meeting in person, we'd give you a VICA mug or a picture of the mug of Stuart in a nice frame, but unfortunately we're not able to do that. But again, we really appreciate the leadership that you're providing in Sacramento, and we thank you very much for being with us tonight. I also want to thank you for the work that you're going to be doing. I imagine this legislative session is a tough one. They're all tough, but given the circumstance, I would imagine it's tougher now. And again, appreciate all the work that you're doing, getting the economy back on track, and moving California forward. Because I think it'd be great if we become the 4th largest economy in the world in the next 10 years.
That's a great goal.
I also want to thank our sponsors one more time, the Garland, Disney, AICP, and CRC. And the next big VICA event will be our Hall of Fame dinner on June 18th. So I hope you're all able to join us. We also have a networking event for SIP with VICA this Friday. And I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. Have a great evening and be safe. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody. Be well.
You too.